The scene opens with Clay, a former member of a secret special forces group called the Beekeepers, who now leads a peaceful life as a beekeeper. After leaving behind secret missions for the US government, he rents a garage from a kind lady named Mrs. Parker, a retired teacher who helps a charity for women and children in need. Clay is the perfect tenant, polite, calm, and grateful for Mrs. Parker's kindness. One day, during dinner, a virus warning pops up on Mrs. Parker's laptop, instructing her to call a phone number. Innocent and not very tech-savvy, she falls into the trap of a scam ring that steals all her savings and the charity funds she managed. Desperate and without options, Mrs. Parker takes a tragic step. When Clay arrives to gift her a jar of honey, he senses something is terribly wrong and finds Mrs. Parker lifeless. To make things worse, FBI agent Verona, who is also Mrs. Parker's daughter, shows up and accuses him of being responsible. After an investigation and some family drama, Verona discovers that her mother's death wasn't a murder but a devastating result of the fake antivirus scams. With this revelation, Clay is released from police custody, but his desire for justice has only just begun. Determined to avenge Mrs. Parker, Clay calls up his old comrades from the Beekeepers and quickly tracks down the scam ring's headquarters. In a scene reminiscent of John Wick, Clay storms the place, takes down the guards with the ease of someone just warming up, and confronts Garnett, the leader of the scammers. After giving the crooks a good beating, he sets up a dramatic explosion that would make even Michael Bay proud. The remaining scammers decide Clay is too big a problem to ignore and hire henchmen to try and take him out, but they completely underestimate Clay's ability to turn any assassination attempt into a disaster for his adversaries. Verona, still determined to learn more about this enigmatic beekeeper, tries to dig up information from government databases but discovers that Clay is a ghost, a true invisible man with no accessible records. And, of course, like in any good action movie, when the enemies can't handle the protagonist, they hire someone even more dangerous. In a desperate move, the CIA hires Anna, a former colleague of Clay's, to take him down. But Clay proves once again to be a hard bee to catch. He escapes an ambush at a gas station, defeats Anna, and, in a scene straight out of Mission Impossible, escapes from a dramatic explosion. The Beekeepers decide to remain neutral in the fight between Clay and Danforth, and now the game is personal. An interesting tidbit about this film is that it marks the return of one of Hollywood's most iconic stunt performers, who came out of retirement to choreograph Clay's intense fight scenes, and it definitely shows on screen. Now, if I were in Clay's shoes, I certainly wouldn't have blown up an entire building right off the bat. After all, a less explosive entrance might have avoided such violent retaliation. However, seeing Mrs. Parker's desperation, I would also feel the need to act and ensure that this kind of tragedy never happens again. An interesting point is how the film portrays the use of technology to scam vulnerable people, highlighting a very real and current danger. Wallace, tired of sitting around while chaos unfolded, decided to take matters into his own hands. He put together a special forces team and told everyone about the Beekeepers. Of course, he painted Clay as a rogue agent who was a threat to innocent people. The speech worked, and the special forces members were convinced that Clay needed to be stopped. The next day, Verona and Matt arrived at the burned-down gas station and found Anna's unrecognizable body. Apparently, Anna was part of a secret government group, but Verona had no idea why she was after Clay. Meanwhile, Clay was getting his hands dirty, literally. Using Anna's severed finger, he broke into her house, accessed her computer, and traced Garnett's phone signal to the 9 Points building. Armed with this information, Clay grabbed weapons and explosives from Anna's house and set off on a mission for revenge. At the 9 Points building, the FBI was ready for action, with the SWAT team outside waiting for Clay to show up. Curiously, Wallace and his Special Forces team let the NSU employees, who were working on phishing scams, continue their business as if nothing was happening. Clay arrived unexpectedly and caught the SWAT team off guard, quickly taking them out. He then entered the building and blended in with the NSU employees, but not for long. A Special Forces member recognized him, and just like that, a fight broke out. Clay, as skillful as ever, outsmarted everyone and defeated them one by one. After interrogating Rico, an NSU executive who was more scared than a cat in water, Clay found out that the company's boss was untouchable by the law until Clay promised to take down the supreme power if it threatened innocent lives. At that moment, Verona and her team arrived with guns pointed at Clay, but he managed to escape. Verona discovered that the owner of NSU and UDG was Danforth, the son of the President of the United States. And to make matters worse, these companies were part of Danforth Enterprises, which also managed software for several government agencies. From there, Verona realized that Clay might be targeting not only Danforth but also the president. And, of course, we can't forget the big charity event at the president's beach mansion, where Verona and her partner ended up along with the Secret Service agents. Despite the beefed-up security, Wallace was still worried and hired mercenaries led by Lazarus, who claimed to have faced a beekeeper before, despite losing a leg in the process. Meanwhile, Clay had infiltrated the event. He hid under a truck, knocked out a SWAT member, planted bombs, and disguised himself as one of the guests. When things got critical, Clay blew up the Secret Service trucks as a distraction, took down the guards, and ran into the mansion in search of Danforth. Inside, Jessica, now aware of her son's crimes, decided to expose everything in hopes of some redemption. Clay faced off against the Secret Service agents and Wallace's mercenaries, showing that it was best not to mess with him. He reached the president's office, defeated Lazarus, and kept going. At the crucial moment, Clay ignored Wallace's pleas not to kill Danforth, who was already panicking with his mother about to expose his crimes. Danforth, in desperation, grabbed a gun, and the situation spiraled out of control. Clay blew the door, entered the room, and Danforth took his mother hostage. Verona tried to convince Clay not to hurt Jessica or her son, but Danforth, nervous and desperate, considered harming his own mother to escape. In this tense moment, Clay asked Verona if she sought law or justice. Seeing the threat Danforth posed to his own mother, Clay made his decision and killed him. Verona had the chance to capture Clay but decided to let him go, preferring justice for her mother and other victims over rigid law enforcement. The movie ends with Clay escaping the mansion using scuba gear hidden on the beach. Well, I definitely wouldn't try to play the hero and blow up Secret Service vehicles as a way to get attention. Maybe I would think twice about attending a charity event at a beach mansion knowing a crazy vigilante is on the loose. An interesting tidbit is that the film was directed by the same director who worked on John Wick, so it's no surprise the fight scenes are so intense and choreographed. I loved watching this movie mainly because it featured my favorite actor, but leave your thoughts in the comments. Take care, and see you in the next video.
And I gotta tell you, it was perfect.